Somewhere over the vast, unforgiving Pacific Ocean, a plane disappeared. No wreckage, no body, no final transmission that made any sense. Just silence, and a mystery that has haunted the world for nearly 90 years. Picture this. It is July 2nd, 1937. The sun is blazing over the central Pacific. A twin-engine Lockheed Electra cuts through the sky at 10,000 feet. Inside, two people, a woman who had already rewritten the rules of what was possible and her navigator, are somewhere between New Guinea and a tiny speck of land called Howland Island. They are exhausted. Their fuel is running dangerously low. And then, without warning, they vanish from the face of the earth. No confirmed crash site, no confirmed graves. Just an open question that has consumed historians, investigators, conspiracy theorists, and dreamers ever since. Welcome to Echoes of Empire. Today, we dive into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in human history, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart. To understand why this disappearance hit the world so hard, you first need to understand who Amelia Earhart actually was. Because she was not just a pilot, she was a revolution with wings. Born in Atchison, Kansas in 1897, Amelia grew up in a world that told women exactly what they were allowed to do, and it did not include flying airplanes. She ignored every single word of that. At a time when aviation itself was barely 2 decades old, Amelia took her first flying lesson in 1921 and bought her first plane just 6 months later. She called it the Canary. It was bright yellow, and she was completely in love with it. By 1928, she became the first woman to cross the Atlantic by air, though she was a passenger on that flight, and she was honest enough to admit it bothered her. She called herself nothing more than a sack of potatoes on that trip. So in 1932, she went back and did it again, alone. She flew solo across the Atlantic, battling ice on her wings, a faulty altimeter, and a fuel leak. And she landed in a field in Northern Ireland, stepped out of her plane, and calmly told a farmer she had just come from America. The world went absolutely insane with admiration. She set records that men had not even attempted. She inspired a generation of women to believe that the sky was not a limit. She wore the right clothes, said the right things, and somehow managed to be both a celebrity and a genuine trailblazer at the same time. Eleanor Roosevelt called her a friend. The public called her Lady Lindy. But Amelia was never content. She always needed one more horizon. And in 1937, she set her sights on the ultimate one, a flight around the entire world at the equator, the longest route possible. The around-the-world attempt was her most ambitious project yet, and it almost did not even make it off the ground. Literally, on her first attempt in March 1937, the plane was badly damaged during takeoff in Hawaii. The project was delayed for months while the aircraft was repaired. By the time she was ready to try again in June, she had reversed the route direction, likely due to weather patterns, and set off for Miami with her navigator, Fred Noonan. Together they hopscotched across South America, Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. It was grueling. The heat was suffocating. The stops were brief. By the time they reached New Guinea in early July, they had already covered over 22,000 miles. But the most dangerous leg still lay ahead, a 2,500-mile over-water stretch to tiny Howland Island, barely 2 miles long and 1 mile wide, sitting alone in the middle of the Pacific, finding it was going to require near-perfect navigation. And that is where everything began to unravel. On the morning of July 2nd, Earhart and Noonan took off from La. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca was stationed near Howland Island, waiting to communicate with the plane and help guide it in. What followed was one of the most heartbreaking series of miscommunications in aviation history. The Itasca received intermittent transmissions from Earhart. She sounded increasingly anxious, reporting that they were running low on fuel and could not locate the island. The Itasca sent signals back, but there is strong evidence that Earhart either could not hear them clearly or was using a different frequency. At 8:43 in the morning local time, she transmitted her last confirmed message, saying they were flying along a line of position but could not see the island. After that, nothing. Silence. The U.S. Navy launched one of the most extensive search operations in its history at that point, covering over 250,000 square miles of ocean. They found absolutely nothing. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan were officially declared dead in January 1939. But declaring someone dead is not the same as knowing what happened to them. And for decades, people have refused to let the mystery rest. Three major theories have competed for dominance, and each one has passionate defenders backed by real evidence. The first and most widely accepted is the crash and sink theory, that the plane simply ran out of fuel, ditched into the ocean, and sank to a depth that has made it essentially impossible to locate. The Pacific is deep and merciless. The area near Howland Island plunges to thousands of feet. Many serious aviation historians believe this is what happened, and the ocean simply swallowed the evidence whole. The second theory is the Castaway hypothesis that Earhart and Noonan missed Howland Island, continued flying southeast, and landed on a remote island, then known as Gardner Island, now called Nikumaroro. The International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, known as TIRE, has spent decades investigating this possibility. They have found fragments of what may be period-appropriate aircraft aluminum on the island, as well as a partial skeleton discovered in 1940 that was later measured and found to be consistent with a woman of Earhart's height and build. They have also found what appears to be a campsite, navigational tools, and artifacts that could date to the late 1930s. The theory is that she and Noonan survived a landing, but eventually died as castaways, their remains scattered by the island's crabs before anyone could find them. Recent underwater expeditions near Nikumaroro have searched the surrounding reef for wreckage, and while nothing conclusive has been confirmed, the investigation is ongoing. The third and most controversial theory is that Earhart was captured by the Japanese, possibly on a spy mission for the U.S. government, and either died in captivity or lived out her days under a different identity. This theory has less hard evidence behind it, but it has never fully gone away. Partly because the timing of her flight overlapped with rising Japanese military activity in the Pacific, and partly because human beings love a good conspiracy. In 2017, a photograph surfaced that some claimed showed Earhart and Noonan on a dock in the Marshall Islands after their disappearance. The U.S. government investigated and concluded the photo predated the disappearance, but the rumor mills kept spinning. Here is what makes the Earhart mystery so uniquely powerful, though. It is not just about a plane crash or a missing person. It is about what she represented. In a world that spent enormous energy telling women what they could not do, Amelia Earhart spent her entire life doing exactly those things anyway. Her disappearance did not diminish her legacy in a strange and painful way. It immortalized it. She became a figure not just of achievement, but of mystery, of the unknown, of the idea that some stories do not have neat endings, and that the absence of an answer can be just as profound as any answer you might find. She flew into the unknown, not because she did not know the risk, but because she believed the horizon was worth reaching for, regardless of what lay beyond it. And that perhaps is the most Amelia Earhart thing of all, that if this story moved you, if the mystery pulled you in, if you found yourself leaning closer to your screen, then you are exactly who Echoes of Empire was made for. We live in the space between history and mystery, between what we know and what we cannot explain. Hit that subscribe button and join us, because we are just getting started. The echoes are everywhere. You just have to listen. We will see you in the next one.